Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar. Our topic today is how to restyle your Lotus applications. Our presenters are Gayathri Viswanathan and Durgaprasad. Gaya is from Maarga Systems and Durga is from Peepal Design Limited. We appreciate their time and we appreciate your time for attending this webinar. Again, just a reminder that your participation in this webinar today enters you into the drawing for the trip to Lotusphere/Connect 2013, so we do appreciate your time to be here. At the end of our presentations, we will have a question and answer session. In your GoToWebinar control panel, you can type in questions and it'll queue them up for me to ask our presenters at the end of their presentation. So we do encourage a lot of questions. We are recording this session so that if any of your colleagues want to watch this afterwards, if they were not able to attend today, then we'll send out a link to you so that you can so they can watch this at a later time. So again, now I'm going to turn the time over to Gayathri, and she will do the first part of the presentation, and she'll introduce their topics and their schedule for this presentation. Guy, the time is now yours.
Thanks, Scott. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I am Gayathri, and I am the COO of Maarga Systems. Been working in the Lotus platform for about 15 years and on XPages over the last few years since it's been started off. And DP, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, morning everybody. My name is Durgaprasad. I'm a director at Peepal Design. We specialize in designing the user experience for enterprise apps. Been in the industry for the last 10, 15 years now. I'm happy to be here.
Thanks, DP. So today, what we are planning to do is to go through why user experience, what does it mean, and how does it make a difference, especially in the world of enterprise applications. Look specific best practices and what is available from the user experience space, and how those can really be seen in XPages and Lotus applications today. Look at some of the design patterns and see how that can be implemented as well. So we may not be doing too many demos, but then we will look at what are the technologies available in XPages that enables us to do these things. So we start off with a poll. Scott,
okay, I'm going to
run that.
Ready? I'm going to launch the first poll. All right, everyone, we have about 30 seconds to do this. Simply select one. I guess we'll do it for everyone that's involved. We have 30% already voting. That's great. Let's see what our audience thinks is the biggest reason why software projects fail. We're almost at 80% of our viewers responding. And we're great. All right, I'm going to go ahead. 5 more seconds. We'll close this poll, and I'll display the results. All right. Here are the results.
All right.
There we go. 51% is the winner there for poorly defined requirements.
Yeah.
Politics, I'm surprised it was so low. All right, here we go. All right, we'll get back to you now, Guy.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. There we go.
All right.
Perfect.
All right. So thanks for your inputs on that. So I just wanted to start with a little factoid. Hard-to-use software has been estimated to cost the U.S. economy close to $30 billion in lost worker productivity. And this is a figure from the 80s, and it's not even, it's probably 20 years old. So, I mean, that's really the cost to the economy from, poorly designed, hard-to-use, software and software applications. So moving on with it. So what is a good product? Good product is anything that solves a user's problem. Is it a solution that it provides a solution that is valuable to users, right? Is it easy to use? Essentially, does it enable users to derive the value easily? And is it pleasant and engaging? So user experience essentially is the science and art of making users say yes to all these questions. And we will explore that in a little bit more detail. So let's take an example of personal transport. The core value here for any user is getting from point A to point B. But if you look at things a little closely in terms of different kinds of users, you will discover. So let's look at this. So we have Kate here, a mother of two, and she wants to travel together with her entire family, with her children and her partner. And she probably is looking for sound stuff and large enough to carry the entire family. On the other hand, you might have somebody like Steve, who's probably an investment banker, who's like really keen on the outdoors, wants to go anywhere. I mean, has really this image of being a rugged, outdoorsy kind of a person, and he probably is looking for. On the other hand, you might have somebody like Mike, who wants to go fast, want to have fun, want to experience thrills, and his choice of vehicle. As you can see, once we get into the details, I mean, there is a divergence in terms of what different segments of people are looking for. So the moral of the story is really, if you are designing a car, it is important to know, to understand the users and what they value. So, on the question of goals and technology, your current commute could look something like this. If you're from India, this is how our daily commute looks like in most of the large cities. But, in the far future, you might have a technology which is reminiscent of, Star Trek. So in that sense, technology could really change the user experience, but the essential goal of users in terms of going from point A to point B remains the same. So the goals are not really transient. The technology changes, and that changes the user experience. That's something that I want to really emphasize here. Right. Now, a couple of points that we need to, a couple of pitfalls that we need to keep in mind while looking at, the whole idea of users and user goals is what I would like to call a self-referential design, where your primary user ends up being you yourself, the designer or the developer or the creator of the sponsor of that particular software application. And you end up making choices about what goes into the software based on your own personal preferences. I like a lot of jelly bean buttons on the interface. I like, shortcut keys. I want cool floating palettes. My eyesight is good, so I don't mind tiny typefaces. I prefer the color green. So this essentially ends up being something that you design for yourself as one of the stakeholders, but really not considering users. So this is one pitfall we need to be constantly aware of, because it's very, very easy to get into this sort of mode. The other thing is, to go to the other extreme of looking at what I like to call the elastic user, which is typically the average user. Our average user typically is somebody who is, range from 26 years old to 60 years old. So that's a pretty extreme range of people. So you would end up having users who are both novices and experts, and you want a user interface that supports both novices and experts. You want a Google-like search, which is like simple universal search box. You might also want advanced search. So essentially, very quickly it deteriorates into a situation where every conceivable feature is crammed into the software, primarily because you have defined the user so loosely that there is really no sweet spot or primary target audience that you are targeting with your software. So in effect, it could end up being something like the Winchester Mystery House, where there is really no means, or rather no plan to the whole thing. Doing user-centered design brings in a lot of benefits. Let's look at the organizational benefits to start off with. To begin with, things like reducing training costs, reducing full cycle development costs is a big benefit, because understanding user requirements is something that you do very early in the process, and if you can get your requirements frozen the right way, you save a lot of costs further down, especially after it has gone and been implemented and users have begun to use it, and then they get back and say, like, this doesn't work for me, I need it a different way. Employee engagement is a definite benefit, because people are much more happier in their work environment. Your customer satisfaction is likely to be positively impacted. And last but not the least, there is quicker adoption of technology, because it's just that much more easier to use. So think Apple iPhone. They were so late coming into the space of smartphones, but they now are the leaders in that space. In terms of benefits for the user, there are two real benefits. One, it saves time, and it reduces errors, which essentially means the user productivity goes up. You are saving costs as an organization, and as an organization you benefit because your customer service levels go up, and that in turn leads to customer satisfaction, and that virtuous cycle continues with higher profits and revenues. So let's go on to enterprise user experience and what really drives, what is really different about enterprise user experience. Enterprises typically focus on productivity, which is basically, by that I mean utility. Is it useful? Does it serve a problem? And is it easy to use? But even given this focus, there are some broad trends in the market which are impacting the way we design enterprise user experiences. The first one being the changing demographics. The changing expectations of the millennial generation, who are being influenced by retail software and products that is out there. I mean, the iPhones and the Android phones that they use every day. So their expectations on design and usability is driven by their experiences outside the enterprise space. The other major trend is everything is social. So that is another key dimension that is coming into the design of enterprise user experiences. One of the key factors of enterprise UX is the complexity of business processes. So that is a given. I mean, at a certain level, you cannot do away with the complexity of business processes. You can only control how this is experienced by users. So that's a key dimension which is very, very different from retail software. And then comes the final point, which is the size of most enterprise software products is very, very different, probably a factor of 10 in terms of size from retail applications. So from my perspective, you can create great products when there is synergy between the technology that you're using, the business goals that you have for the software that you're building, and user requirements. So in the intersection of these three aspects are where great products are built. Guy, do you want to come in here and talk a little bit about how things are with Lotus Applications?
Sure, thanks, DP. If you can just shift over to me in terms of the presentation, that'll help. Yeah, so this, I think, on the right, this picture that you see probably is very, very familiar to most of you. Old style Lotus Notes 1.0 is what we call it now. Standard applications, but they really served a purpose. I mean, for all the hype that's going on in the Lotus world, saying, oh, Lotus, those old user interfaces, it really doesn't look good. But the fact of the matter is, when Lotus was being used across a lot of enterprises, these applications served the purpose, and most of these were really, very quickly developed. They were RAD and quite often built by business users who could put together something that worked for themselves. And they were primarily focused on making sure that their workflow systems or their business processes was captured. Usability came a distant second. If it worked and if they could do it, that's what they could do. They could use it for. And lastly, the key thing there is the fact that you could build usable applications even then, but the focus wasn't there. Today, there's a vast difference, because today you have XPages, and with XPages has come a lot of new technology, a lot of new functionality, a lot of new ability to bring in what you see in retail space, what you see with Web 2.0, what you see with what today is being called Web 3.0 or social, and bring it all together within the Lotus applications. And that's what we're going to see in our next 20 minutes or so. What we're going to take is specific best practices from the user experience world and see how and what parts of XPages applications and Lotus technology helps in actually surfacing these. So we'll start off right with the first one. Right. It's focusing on the user.
Guy, can I interrupt for just 1 second? Part of the bottom of the slide is cut off. Can you change the share, maybe the whole screen, or maybe the whole application?
Okay, Scott, can you just give me access? I'm not sure how it's coming up at all. Can you just
on the Show My on your control panel, there should be under the Show My screen.
I think DP is sharing right now, so if you can just shift over to me.
Oh, ship it over to you? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. And let me just show my screen. And go
there we go.
Page. Are you able to see the full thing?
Yeah, now we see the full thing. Apologize about that.
Okay, super. And then I jump right over to, there we go. Yeah. So DP, tell us a little bit more about how do you start with the user?
Right. So the first and foremost, you need to know who you are building the application for. And a typical technique that we use is to profile the user. There are various words for it. Some people call it personas. But essentially, the user profile consists of trying to understand what the user goals are, right? What does person X want to do in the context of the software that you're trying to build? Then you try and understand his responsibilities, and to a certain extent, you try and understand what kind of a person that user is. And I'm talking about not just one single person, but being able to talk to a lot of users and deriving this from the insights that you gain from all these people. So a user profile is hypothetical. It's not real people. So you do not really go talk to one person and transcribe the interview and make a user profile. So it's a hypothetical thing derived from multiple engagements that you've had with users, and it's a archetypical profile. So it's not average users. Again, coming back to the elastic users, it's representative of usage patterns, and the keyword here is patterns. So you're looking at similar kind of behavior and the way people work in a given function. That should be there should be a pattern in that. Can we go on to the next? Right. So we want to make it specific. The reason we want to make it specific is to bring alive the user to the people who are involved in designing and developing the product. So give the person a name, a picture, a social history, so that he is flesh and bones in front of you, and you always refer to the person when you are taking any kind of decision on what stays in and what goes out. Right. So the other thing that we need to do when we are talking about users is really figure out what their work model is. So I mean, in this small example that I have, we're talking about a warehouse supervisor, and what are the different kinds of people that he works with. So we're trying to capture the interrelationships between people, because work doesn't typically, especially in enterprises, it is always a collaborative activity, right? We are trying to identify what the pain points are, where are the breaks in the processes, and we are trying to design something that will, enable the user to do things quicker, faster, right? Yeah, can we go on to the next one?
Yep.
Right.
Sure.
So now starting with the the best practices or heuristics, as I like to call it, one of the first things that we need to have in place is to provide visibility of the system status. In simpler terms, that basically means the system should tell the user at every point in time what is happening. This is a pretty common occurrence with all of us. How many times have we restarted or rebooted a system because we thought the system is hanging, while in fact it was actually busy working, right? So that case is typical, where the system hasn't really told the user what is happening, and that leads to disastrous consequences in being able to complete the task that he was doing. Guy, I mean, how does XPages and Lotus Notes handle something like this?
Right. Thanks, JP. Really speaking, in the old style Lotus applications, I'm sure a lot of us have seen, the ubiquitous, like, we had the hourglass that would go back and forth when there's an agent running in the background, or something is just happening and we are waiting, and sometimes a very huge form that's just loading. When you come to XPages, some of the key things that we should definitely use to when we define and develop new applications is, the fact is the Ajax functionality is built in. So make use of the partial refresh, and for when you have multiple different areas in your application, what you can do is to refresh systemically which parts that you really want to show when a particular value is changed or what is happening. You can show that, and you can show that by refreshing just specific parts of your application. The second major area that typically used to happen in workflows is when you open a document, or when you are just like working with a flow, the user doesn't really know where they are. The earlier times we used to have a status, and the status used to say something. It used to say, okay, we're waiting for approval or approved, or that's about it. But today with XPages, what you can do is you can build visual guides, like what you can see on screen. You can tell them where they are in the workflow and what is it supposed to do, and how many more steps that they are, and which again comes back later as a pattern as well. So what it gives us is an ability to interact with the user more closely and walk them through the application, making it very easy for them.
Right. All right. So then, next one in our list of best practices is user control and freedom. that essentially means that the user has to be in control all the time and should be free to take decisions in terms of, how we normally works. It shouldn't feel like that the machine has taken over. That is not a feeling that we like as individuals, and it's not something that we want to embed into our software, where the user has totally lost control of the application and what is happening. Guy?
Yeah.
Can you give us an example? Yeah.
Definitely, DP. So if you look at this, one of the things that I think it feels really good with XPages these days is the fact that, each area of your application can actually have something like this. And I've just taken a representative example. You can have a pen which just edits that particular area. You can give them a help only for that and a save right there. So how do you do this? Think of your application and split it up into modules. Each of them can be a different custom control, and the good part about it is today an XPage is front end, right? It is not directly connected to your data or your back-end form, and because of that, you have a lot of control over what people see on screen and what they do on screen. So things like undo is pretty straightforward because you don't really have to update your back-end data. You don't have to really update your form. You don't have to update your document until you are sure that your user has actually completed everything that you want them to do on the screen. So, this used to be a big problem for us earlier when we couldn't, they would do something and they wanted to go back, and we had to keep track of it somewhere in either a list, or we had to keep track of it in a separate document in the back end, and then do a lot of computations to bring them back. Now that's gone because you really have a layer between your front end, which is your XPage, and your back end where the data is stored, and because of that you can bring in some of this control mechanisms, allowing users to do undo, allowing users to find what they want to do and then save it right there and things like that, giving them a lot of freedom to work the way they normally do. Can you tell us about consistency and standards? I think this is a big area, right?
Right. Especially in the case of enterprise applications where the size of even something as small as a departmental solution tends to be in the hundreds of screens, consistency is a key requirement. What this essentially means, is that users should not have to wonder, whether different words, situations, and actions mean the same thing or differently, or work differently when the context changes. So a nice example is, Microsoft Office. You have, huge amount of consistency in, for instance, the menu structures, in the way some of the actions, formatting actions work across Excel, PowerPoint, and Word. That's what we mean by consistency. And on top of it, we are talking about standards. And when we're talking about standards, we are talking about platform standards. So trying to adhere to platform standards is a big plus because users already come with a certain amount of knowledge and learning about how things work in that kind of an environment. So if you have a mobile application that works on an iPhone, it has to work a certain way. And if it's on a Windows-based system, it has to work a certain way. So anybody who has shifted from, for instance, a Windows PC to the Mac world would realize the difficulty and the learning that that person has to do to make the shift. So that's similar. So in a sense, if you follow the platform standards, then people know what to expect and how to use it. Guy?
Definitely.
How about some examples?
Yeah, sure. So, this is just a very simple example of how one of the very key concepts in XPages can be made to use to bring in consistency and standards. So there's something called themes. Now, a theme in XPage really gives you a set of CSS. You can standardize on the way your buttons should look, standardize on colors, standardize on how you're going to format your screen, and everything you can put together in a theme and then apply it across all your applications. What you don't really want to do is have one theme for the application and go fiddle with it each time. Trying to, as what DP said, trying to adhere to a certain standard across the organization, putting this together upfront, coming up with ideas and putting that together will really help maintain this consistency across all the different applications, and that automatically, after the first application that people are trained on, the next application that you roll out is going to be that much easier to train them because they know what to expect. They know, like, if you have standardized that I'm going to have a menu bar right on top, they go for the menu bar right on top, and that's what you can do with themes by customizing your custom controls, by putting together your theme and bringing in a standard in terms of all your applications. Now the advantage is, by doing this, you can also have different areas in your department. You can definitely, that's going to come up saying, I like a different color. Now you don't have to go through a lot of effort just because you want to change the color, because that's a simple change that you can make in one place and still expect your application to work the same way across all the different other departments. So that's really useful.
Right. Now, the next best practice that everybody should try and keep an eye on is error prevention. Right. So typically, and this happens a lot in enterprise applications which are used in different cultural contexts in different countries. The kind of formats that you use for dates are different in India and the UK and in the US. And by simply providing contextual help in place in the form where somebody is about to enter a date, you prevent the user from making the mistake. You might have validations built in which will tell you at a later point in time that you've entered the date in a wrong format and you should enter it in maybe DDMMYY or some other format. But that is already too late. The user is already feeling a little dissatisfied because he made a mistake. Nobody likes to make mistakes. So error prevention is really about a user interface that will prevent users from making the errors in the first place.
Yeah. So see, one of the things that you can do, couple of things, right? One is use the dojo controls, use the different types of controls that we do have available with XPages, and OpenNTF is a wonderful place here to go and get snippets, and there are very good examples of what you can take and put together both for error prevention and error handling. There are some standards there which can really make the applications come up to a notch. The second thing is the advantage of not letting the user do whatever they want. And that's what I wanted to show in this particular screen. By this time, this particular process, they have already completed requesting. They've got some kind of a claim number, and the only thing that the user is supposed to do right now is mark off whether the inspection was done. And so the only editable field here is to enter an inspection date and say the inspection was done. There's nothing else that the user can do, which kind of prevents them, to make some mistakes. When there's not too many options that they need to do, and what they can do it simply. It makes life a lot simpler. And from the perspective of XPages, that's pretty easily achieved. Even if you have data from multiple different forms in the backend, even if they're data silos differently, but because your XPage can bring in data from different forms, different views, what you can do is construct a user interface where you guide them to do only what they are supposed to do, and that's what's happening here.
Right, that's great to hear. Right, the next best practice is to emphasize recognition instead of recall. So a computer is really good at remembering things. It has a huge amount of memory. On the other hand, a human being has a very small short-term memory. So typically you are able to keep in in your short-term memory something like 7 to 10 items before you'll have to trash that and and gets replaced with newer things that you need to remember. So essentially what this talks about is shifting the load from the user to the system, essentially play to the strengths of the system, and give the system or the application a memory. So the simple ways in which you can operationalize this guideline is to provide users with options while he to choose from, instead of making him type in whatever the choice is. That's a really simple way of getting some memory into the application itself.
Right. And here's a classic example in the Web 2.0 world of a tag cloud. You don't really have to make them wonder what tags are available, how do I find my information. I very easily go and pick out whatever I want to see by implementing the tag cloud. And similarly, like now in the XPage world, what you can do, and this is actually just a simple click of a button and choosing an option, you can actually have an ability to have drop downs. You can have an autocomplete, and you can, when you're typing in, you can let the particular field like look up and actually show you a set of values, just like Google search does. And those are fairly standard things that you can implement in an XPage application. Simple stuff, but definitely which enable users to have this recognition rather than making them remember stuff before they have to type.
Right. Yeah, you said it right. I mean, it's the simple things that matter, and the tag load is a great way to help the user and present to him what were the things that not just he but the community has been viewing, reading, working on, so that it's easy for him to go to the relevant information or content. Now coming to aesthetics, Web 2.0 is really the prevalent trend, and that comes with that is a certain kind of aesthetic. Basically, what we are talking about here is aesthetics needs to essentially support the primary function of the software, right? I mean, so you're not there to admire the aesthetics, you are there to perform a job. So aesthetics in this case, serves the ultimate goal of the user, which is to perform something. So when aesthetics work well with the functionality of the user interfaces, you have a great product because they are working really well together. Yeah, I mean, I'm told that XPages, provides a lot of capabilities to create awesome looking screens.
Absolutely. Yeah. DP, what you can see is, I mean, this is a classic. I don't know how many of you have already been to this website. This is an OpenNTF initiative, collaborationtoday.info. And the thing is, it's a beautiful example of what a Lotus application can look like. And quite often, I think at the first glance, no one even believed that this was an XPages application. Just as what DP said right now, there is a curation where you are getting all different kinds of information, putting it together, and making it easy for users to go and get the information they really need. And if you look at the screen in front of you, that's what this does. It's got Web 2.0 kind of design, very minimalistic. There's not any extraneous stuff. And to be very honest, it's actually creating information from connections. It's actually getting information from Twitter and different kinds of RSS feeds, putting it all together in a manner that's very easy to use and updates itself. And that's what is possible. And I believe even the design of this is going to be up in OpenNTF. So that could be a good place for someone who wants to start off to take a look and kind of get inspired by.
Right. That's great. helping users recover from errors. Mistakes are an essential element of being human. We all make mistakes. We all make mistakes when we are using, software products. So a good software application is one which helps the user recover from errors. We are all familiar with really unfriendly, rude, unhelpful messages, which doesn't really help the user in any way to recover from the situation he finds himself in. So, a software application that is good needs to have error messages that are going to help the user get back on track. Right? That's a critical requirement, and we should all look at the software applications that we are building and look at those this particular aspect.
Definitely, DP. I mean, I don't think we can overemphasize on this particular aspect, because and with your application, what you can do is not just report the error or help them give them ideas, but then you can also link them off into specifics or be able to give information, capture details of what's going wrong, and capture all of that information and send it out to the help desk, so that the help desk really can help the users much faster, because they have the information, and that can be done pretty easily with your XPages application. Capture what's going wrong, where it is, and specifics in terms of, is it a particular function that's going wrong, or if it's something maybe your Java virtual machine that's running out of memory. Capture as much information that's possible and hand it over in a manner that the help desk person can really work with and help the users much faster, and things like that is possible. So that definitely helps the user in the application. So a quick recap. We talked about starting with the user being the most important part of it, and we talked about being able to give the user a sense of where they are in the application, what's really happening, and giving them an ability to control what they can do. And we talked about how custom controls and how partial refreshes in XPages are able to do that pretty well. Maintaining consistency and standards using themes was the next thing that we talked about, and ability to kind of prevent errors, because you can control the user experience even if it's coming from different data sources, but you can control the user experience. Guiding the user in a particular manner is something that that was stressed upon. So we did talk about the aesthetic and minimalistic design and being able to recover from errors pretty fast. So what we've seen, I think, is a significant increase in worker productivity, and what Deloitte says it's about 300% increase in worker productivity, just because a user-centered approach was taken to the design and development of a ERP system. So before we move on, a quick poll. Scott?
All right, we'll start the next poll. So the next poll is, what percentage of your project effort do you think should be invested in user design, user experience design? We'll go ahead and keep this open for another 15 seconds. I think we're going to be a little bit surprised here. We're up to 70% of the users voting, so we have another 10 seconds. I know, because I've been in the Lotus Notes development side for a long time, and I know for a long time it was probably less than 10% was really really the standard. Hey, you have the view, you have the form, here you go. No, we can't make it so it's a WYSIWYG print. So here you go. All right, we're going to go ahead and close the poll and share it with everyone. And I'm surprised that
15 to 30%.
Yep.
Wow.
I was expecting more of the
good.
10 to 15% would be the winner on
Yeah,
this.
that's what I was thinking too. Yeah.
That's great. That's good.
Looks like we've been preaching to the choir.
The choir, exactly.
Right.
All right, I'll hide this out. It's a great poll. Thank you, everyone, for participating in that poll.
Yeah.
Super. So, DP, tell us more about how do you really think we should go about this UX design process?
Right. So a user-centered design process, the UCD process for short, really has three distinct phases. While I say that it's a highly iterative process because design is not an exact science. It is in certain areas, but in a lot of areas it's a very iterative approach that results in good user experiences. But anyway, stepping back a little bit, the three phases are: you first understand the user, right? And we emphasized that a lot during the last 30-40 minutes of our talk. Then the second part is iterative design, and I want to emphasize the iteration and quick iterations at that. So essentially, you're talking about designing something and going back to your users with the solutions that you might have, the options, and then going back again to the drawing board and course correcting and tweaking that till you have something that your users love, right? And finally, if you do that well, I mean, you will be in a situation where what you have designed pretty closely matches with with what users want from the software applications. But it makes really good sense to do a user evaluation of the product in terms of having it tested out by your users, right? That in essence is the user-centered design process. If you can move on.
Yep.
Next stage. All right. So when it comes to enterprise software, we have a unique challenge. And that challenge is the size and complexity of typical business processes that you're trying to automate. And in that kind of a context, it's really not feasible for any team of user experience professionals and product managers to be able to design every single screen and use case that might be there in that product. So we need to take a slightly out-of-the-box approach to designing user experiences for the enterprise. And we like to call it scalable user experiences because we try and find synergies in the way we design and build user interfaces. So one of the first things that we pay attention to is the consistency. By consistency, I am referring to the internal consistency of the application as a whole. For instance, elements like the spatial arrangement of your elements. Is your save button always the first button on the top left of your toolbar? The structure of the application. Can the user quickly get a sense for where to find what on a screen? Functions and behavior. How does the application behave across the entire application? Is really critical for users to feel confident about using it everywhere, right? So save should work exactly the same way no matter where you use or which transaction you use it on. It shouldn't behave like a normal save and like a save as in some other place. Terminology is a critical thing. I mean, you call an object, an artifact, or a document the same thing in different places in the application. The use of graphical, artifacts like icons and things like that should be used consistently and should not be reused in a way that leads to confusion. The other key aspect of building and designing scalable user experiences is what I call UI patterns. Patterns as such have been very popular in software development and are quite important in the design of user interfaces as well, because user interface design patterns are essentially recurring reusable solutions that solve a common design problem. And there are many patterns that have already been identified and defined. It's a generic solution, so it's really not about IP. It's the commons, so anybody can use this and realize that in their own software applications. I have a few examples of what I call our UI patterns. One of the first things which is used very frequently is master detail. So essentially you have a master table which is showing you a list of objects or records, and on selection of something then you show a detail. There could be UI patterns which are at a slightly lower level, things like how table filtering happens in your application, or how you sort of aggregate usage of different kinds of information pieces by a community. User guidance, especially when it's a complex process that you want to break down into smaller steps, or activity streams. And we're talking about going social quite literally in every part of the enterprise. So the activity stream is becoming a standard UI pattern. Guy, I'm very curious to know what kind of patterns are possible in Lotus Notes applications and XPages in particular.
Yeah, sure. I'm just checking the same patterns, DP, and then showing how those are possible.
Right.
So on screen you see a master detail, a list of different documents or different items, which then on click or edit you can open up the detail and then go do this. Now the curious thing here again is the fact that what you see on screen, the client matter, the case and attorney, and the attachments are really coming from 3 different data documents in the back. But then for the user, they come and show together in a unified interface, creating that illusion of I'm looking at the details of a single information. That's important, and that's one of the things that you can do with an XPage. Moving on, and this again is a classic example of a table filter. So you can choose a certain set of information on screen and then choose to filter it so that what the user sees is most relevant to what they are going to be using and how they're going to be working. I think this is something that we saw earlier. A tag cloud is a very, very useful thing when you're aggregating information across communities or how people are using it, and giving a visual way for a user to see what's popular, what's most useful, and what others think are most useful as well. DP just talked about breaking down a complex set of tasks into simpler, manageable steps, showing the user how many steps are left to complete in a visual manner that kind of gives them an easy way of tracking where things are, and that really helps them. And the last but not the least is, of course, the activities stream. And just for the benefit of our listeners here, this is available on OpenNTF as a MyWebGate social software uploaded by Richie Schmidt, and that's a good way of seeing activity streams and implementing them in XPages. So that's a quick overview of some of the same UI patterns that DP talked about, how they've been implemented in XPages-based applications in Lotus platform. So here are some of the useful resources that people might be finding it. Of course, for us in the Lotus community, OpenNTF is a great place to get some of these pre-built, or at least you can take a look at it and see how it's been done and see how it's relevant for your implementation. These are some of the websites that we refer to fairly regularly to kind of look at what are the patterns that we can adopt, making software more usable and bring in the steps that we talked about in the previous 45 minutes. So with that, any questions?
Okay, so if you do have some questions for Durga or Guy, please just type that into your control panel, and we can. I'll go ahead and read it to them. They can respond to it. One question that I have is when you concentrate on the user experience, user design experience, you know, if we're saying it's 15%, 15 to 30% is the ideal range, is that also translating to cost? Does it also increase the cost 15 to 30%?
Typically, on a medium size project, user experience, in my experience, tends to be in the range of about 15 to 20%, and that should work well. We typically have this ratio of about one user interface designer per 10 developers. And that's a nice thumb rule to have when you're sizing or planning your resources.
Okay, perfect. All right, we do have some questions coming in here. I need to expand my screen so I can see them. I know you talked about XPages. Are there any tips for user design within the 8.5.3 Notes client?
Definitely. I mean, see, if you look at all the best practices that we talked about, nothing, I mean, it's easy to do in XPages, but it's not a question of, what you have. It's a question of what you do with what you have. If you look at, I mean, for me at least, I've been referring to this blog called Interface Matters by Chris Blatnick, and he was one of the people who was focusing on user interface design in standard Lotus Notes applications quite some time way back as well. So it is possible, if you adhere to the same kind of best practices, you will be able to provide these functionalities to the users. I mean, let's take an example of error handling. Now you could write your error handling code all in your save, or you could write it like in every one of your field moves, as I'm exiting the field. Neither of it gives you the right field, but what you can also do is provide a button, or like as they are moving away from a section, you can like validate all the fields in that particular section and give a user response. So these kind of things can be done even in the standard Notes application. You don't have to go only to XPages.
All right, perfect. Do you have any book recommendations for user experience design?
One highly recommended one is the inmates are running the asylum.
Okay.
Right?
Inmates running the asylum. I like it.
The asylum. That's a good one. The second one that I like is Don't Make Me Think, Steve Krug.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Excellent.
Right. Those would be really good books to start. In the whole sphere of user-centered design.
All right. Perfect. Is XPages considered less rad than traditional Notes development?
Not really. If you look at the number of, if the thing is it takes a little more time upfront to get used to the new paradigm of working, but once you get used to it and you start setting up your custom controls and your themes and your CSS and all of these, it starts becoming very fast to assemble new applications, because you would have some of these pre-built and you can reuse a lot of these in your new applications. So I would say it kind of becomes easier as time passes by.
Perfect. And what are the best conversion tools or techniques available for converting Notes to apps? Notes apps to XPages.
Okay. Okay, let me put it this way. There is no way you can just click a button and then you're going to have a new XPages app in front of you with everything there. I don't think that's going to happen. But what it takes is there are multiple vendors offering tools that are there in the market. Plus, it does involve some upfront planning. We do have, from Maarga systems, we do have a process called XMap, which kind of helps you plan and then analyze and then put together a pilot, and then from there move on to converting into XPages. So it's a combination of tool plus a process plus upfront planning that kind of puts it together for you to make it to XPages.
Exactly. That's exactly the answer I was going to say. And also that if you really want to get some applications done, Maarga Systems does offer those services. So they have experienced staff. I know this is a webinar, so Guy is not going to do the plug, but I will. That if you really need to
Thanks,
migrate
Scott.
to do some quick migrations, they have a team and experienced team who have done excellent work for companies all over the world. All right, next questions here. Will you be, okay, yes, we'll be sending out a link to everyone with this recording. Guy, if you're willing to share this presentation, we'll also have that in there. And if you'll email me these book recommendations that you have mentioned, I'll go ahead and put that on your webpage, for this video on the notes code, and everyone will receive an email with that link so that you can see those books. Last question here so far is, given the percentile that is going into the user interface design, how should the time be split between Notes client design and XPages design? Or should all future development be spent in developing XPages?
I would take this differently, right? It totally depends upon who you are developing for and what your organization has decided. Now, if you are looking at predominantly a web browser-based client, that's what you're going to work for, I would say go for XPages, because it offers you a whole lot of more tools, a whole lot of more patterns, and ability to bring in best practices from all different areas into Lotus Notes design. But if you're developing for a predominant Notes client application, which people are going to be using from Notes client, we should focus on that and bring it in. And XPages, unless you are using it as a local client and replicating to the server, it doesn't work too well as a platform for accessing data on the server directly. And I think IBM has posted about that as well.
Okay, perfect. There's where the politics come in. Who's making those decisions and whose budgets go on depends on which platform will be influenced, I'm sure, as well. So that's great. Well, we are just actually over an hour. We had some great questions. Guy and Durga, thank you so much for your presentation. I'll give you the last word to wrap up, and then I'll close, and we'll be ready to go back to work.
All right.
That's good.
Go on, Guy. Sorry.
Yeah, so from my side, what I wanted to leave you guys with is, it's not about what you have, it's about what do you do with what you have. And today, in the Lotus Notes world, every kind of tool, technology, and the ability to implement is available. Now, it's a question of using it well so that your users can get the best application that they can work with that will solve their business problem.
Yeah.
Excellent.
From my side, I would say today an easy-to-use application is minimum table stakes. If you want a successful product or a quick adoption of technology, you need to aim higher. You need to aim for really great user experiences, and that needs to be a commitment that everybody makes in the organization who's building applications for users. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you again so much for your time. Attendees, thank you for being here. We're getting a lot of great positive comments, great sessions, and definitely they want to share this with their project managers and management teams. So well worth everyone's time. Guy and Durga, thank you so much. And again, thank you everyone for joining us for this webinar. I hope everyone has a great and successful day.
Thank you so much, Scott.
Thank you so much.
And yeah, thank you very much, and thank you all the audience for participating. Thank you.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.